everyone. Thank you very much for coming out today on this very, very sad occasion. And unfortunately, for those of us who live in Jackson Heights, it's not the first time that we've had to gather for a murder involved with a gay hate crime. In 1990, Julio Rivera was murdered on the corner of 77th Street and 37th Avenue. In 2001, Edgar Garcon was murdered on the other corner, 77th Street and 37th Avenue. And today we're gathering in the memory of Eber Orozco, who was murdered here on Monday afternoon. This horrific hate crime that occurred here in this corner is something that cannot go without a community response. And that's why we felt the obligation to come out today to condemn this type of violence and to say that we're not going to accept it. Unfortunately, we've not been able to be joined by Councilmember Julissa Ferreras because she just had a baby boy and she's home taking care of the baby. But of course, her sentiment and her organizing of this press conference was instrumental as well. We've been joined by her Chief of Staff, Yoselyn Henao, who also I want to bring up to say hello and welcome.
Good morning, buenos días. La concejal Julissa Ferreras no pudo estar aquí porque ella acaba de dar a luz, pero nuestro equipo de trabajo y ella se unen a los demás oficiales electos hoy en un día muy triste para nuestra comunidad. Ya como el concejal Roma ha dicho, ya ha pasado muchos otros casos y ahora decimos que no vamos a tolerar esta clase de episodios en nuestra comunidad. No hay aquí no hay espacio para la intolerancia, ya sea racial, ya sea homofóbica, no hay espacio aquí en una comunidad tan diversa. Y de parte de ella voy a leer una nota que ella le manda, un mensaje a toda la comunidad. On behalf of Councilmember Ferreras, I'm going to read her statement. It is unfortunate to learn that two violence crimes occurred at the same community just over a few days from each other. My heart goes to the family of both victims. No one should have to bury their loved ones over senseless crime. With respect to the hate crime, I want to make it clear that we will not tolerate intolerance of any kind in our community. There's absolute no justification for assaulting an innocent person just because you believe that their ethnicity as LGBT. I applaud the NYPD for the swift action in comprehending both victims and urge the public to exercise caution. If you say something, say something. The public safety is in everyone's responsibility. I also want to say that we have learned yesterday that the assignment of this murder also assaulting someone else before, but the person thought that by not reporting it was doing someone else a favor. Now, if you are a victim of a crime, with regards to your legal status, you have to report it because today it might be an assault. Tomorrow it will be a murder, and there's no kind, and we cannot tolerate this in our community. So thank you for gathering here, and we must continue. So thank you.
Just to give you a little, thank you, Yoselyn. Just to give you a little synopsis of what happened, Mr. Orozco had dropped off his wife to go to the doctor's office here, and was parking his car when the alleged assailant, Stephen Torres, attacked him brutally. And as a matter of fact, when I spoke to the commanding officer of the 115th precinct, he told me he had never seen in all of his career a crime as horrific and as bloody and as violent as the tape which they have shows occurred here on this corner. Fortunately, there were plenty of police around. There were 4 undercover officers up in the subway. When Mr. Torres attempted to escape, he ran up the stairs, and the 4 officers immediately suspected that something was wrong, heard the screaming and yelling, and pursued him and ran about 4 or 5 blocks down Roosevelt Avenue, where they captured him. Upon being brought into the police station, he was being questioned, and he offered a defense of that Mr. Orozco, which is unbelievable and we believe to be false, made some type of kissing motions and other sexual motions toward him, and offered what we call the gay panic defense. This gay panic defense is one of the reasons why I wanted to be sure to hold this press conference today. Gay panic defense is totally unacceptable. And just recently, about a week or so ago, the American Bar Association curtailed the use of the gay panic defense and asked lawyers not to use that any longer as a defense in any criminal cases. We have seen the gay panic defense used time and time again to justify the actions of these assailants. That is totally unacceptable. To go back to the story, upon his arrest, they found out that Mr. Torres may have been involved in another hate crime in the 5th Precinct in Manhattan, where he stabbed a co-worker, a construction worker, in the arm as well. The police were beginning to investigate that case when this case happened, and then they put the two cases together. And as Yoselin said before, it is extremely important that people who are victims of crimes report these crimes to the police department so that they can be thoroughly investigated and so that other crimes can be prevented from happening in the future. So today, we have a message from everybody in the community, but also in particular from the LGBT community. We are not going to accept this type of violence. We are not going to allow people to do this to our community, and we are going to use every legal means possible to fight back against this type of violence in our communities. So we have been joined by a number of other elected officials and advocates from the community, and let me start off by introducing Senator Jose Peralta. John's here? Oh, John Liu is here, okay. Controller John Liu, who has joined us as well.
Yeah.
John?
No, let Jose go first. No, go, John.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
The controller.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Drum, for pulling all of us together to send a very strong message that there is no room, there is no tolerance for intolerance, for hatred that occurs in this community or anywhere else in this city or beyond for that matter. And this, as Councilmember Drum has already detailed, is yet another example of how hate crime has no boundaries. Hate crime against anybody is a hate crime against all of us. Now, this year alone, we have seen what I believe is an inordinate number of hate crimes perpetrated against members of the LGBTQ community here in Queens and in other parts of the city. And with every one of these, we must stand up ever more forcefully to denounce this kind of crime, to ask the community to work with the police, and to report these kinds of crimes. Because if the first crime, if the first stabbing had been reported, then maybe Mr. Orozco would still be with us today. So these crimes have to be reported. There has to be a strong sense of community, a strong sense of relationship and working relationship between the community and the police. And we must denounce these hate crimes because, once again, a hate crime against a member of the LGBT community turns out to be a hate crime against all of us. Thank you, Councilmember Trump.
Thank you, Controller Liu. Senator Peralta.
Thank you, Danny. I often say that I represent the United Nations of all Senate districts. And I do. We are very tolerant with everyone's culture, people that come around from different parts of the world. But what we're not tolerant of is the fact that this was a hate crime. We're not tolerant of what happened the other day, where you had someone who stabbed another person simply because he felt that he was throwing kisses at him. That is unacceptable. Now, luckily, they were undercover cops, but what we need to continue to do is to push for more police officers to walk the beat that aren't undercover, so that when people see police officers walking down the street, they will hopefully deter from committing any of these types of crimes. Now, this individual has been accused of attacking someone else previously. So we don't know if police officers walking the beat may have deterred him. But I do know that if people do see police officers walking down the street, that may deter them. And the police department has done great with the limited amount of resources that they have here. But we need more. And that's one of the things that I will be talking to whoever the next mayor is, along with all the other elected officials here, is that we need more police presence in this area. Because Roosevelt Avenue is the old Times Square. And we need to make sure that it's cleaned up.